Well, right around the 1930s, Prohibition happened. We dealt with Prohibition with alcohol, and then Prohibition with cannabis kicked in 1937. Now, obviously, since then, that has slowly been repealed at the state level to where it's kind of recognized as medicine today in almost half the United States. Industrial hemp and cannabis come from the same family line, but they do different things. Industrial hemp used to grow wild in the field, and our farmers up until the mid-1930s would use it and sell it to make rope, to make paper, to make all sorts of industrial things. So it was used and cheap to use to make paper. When the mid-1930s, there was a guy named William Randolph Hearst, who was a world leader in America and helped build the country in his own way. At the time, he owned almost every newspaper in the United States and almost every paper mill in the United States. Paper was made out of wood with his production. He had ties to the oil market and would make it out of wood. Industrial hemp could make paper for almost half the cost. So it was a competitor in the market he needed to eliminate. So because of his political ties and because of his power, he ran a smear campaign against it because he had newspapers and tied cannabis usage recreationally to racism and abuse and incest and a bunch of other things that were false. But when you have every paper in the country and you have a country that has gone through the Depression that is very scared, it was easy to manipulate public opinion. Through that, through his ties in Washington with a man named Harry Anslinger, who at the time was the head of what is now the DEA, he worked with him to write a proposal to tax the product to the point where it was unusable. So they used the smear campaign in public, and in Congress, they wrote a tax to where it was too expensive to use and got it outlawed. So Hearst paper and his paper mills, all of the sales went up and industrial hemp became obsolete because you couldn't afford to use it. Well, in 1970, Nixon pulled all those books off the shelves because he categorized cannabis in the same categories as heavy drugs. So unless you could fly overseas, there was no way to get any medical information. All that changed in the mid-90s when California passed their proposition and we got the internet. We know now the internet allows you to access information at the click of a button. And what people in California found was that cannabis was successful in helping patients with wasting syndrome and with cancer eat and have a better quality of life for the time that they still had on this earth. So they were able to pass a proposition at the state level that allowed them to use cannabis legally. And because of the internet, they were able to contact physicians overseas who'd been studying the plant for years. But America didn't know about it because America lives in their own bubble. It turns out that most of the science behind cannabis as a medication has been done in Israel, our sister country. There's a physician that we've worked with his colleagues. His name is Raphael Mashua. Now he's 87, 88 years old. But he discovered the first medical property in cannabis in the modern era in the 1960s.